The fourth step of the positive system setup is setting up your station manager. This is the setup for each of the workstations that are attached to your server. So if we go into Station Manager under the Maintenance tab, we see a list of which stations that are set up on your server. Let's start with Station 1. Here I check the little box that says this is my default station, and if you have multiple divisions, you can have each station have its own unique division. So when you do sales for that division, it keeps the income and cost in that division. You put the station name here. I put Dan Spakowski. And where do I want to collect all my tender? Since this is going to be a counter, I want all my tender to go to here. And if I've got someone in the back room with doing the accounting, receiving the accounts receivable checks in the mail, I may have their station as where the accounts receivable checks are being calculated. Wallpaper gives you the ability to set up wallpaper on this white grid area. So you can put a picture of your company or anything that you want that will show up in this big white area. We're not going to use the touchscreen interface for login, but that could be used if you've got a touchscreen monitor up at the counter. And we say to prompt to log out securely when you switch users. We're not going to maximize any of our screens when we start, and do not show the positive menu bar. If this is checked, this menu bar up here disappears. Under transactions, we say we want to use invoice style always. We don't want to use register. These I just leave unchecked, and when somebody does a return, is it put on account? We should say ask what to do, apply the credit now, apply the credit later, or ask which I should do. Ask for ID when creating new transactions. This is if you're at a counter and you've got multiple people in the drawer and you'd want to know who is the person that rang up that sale. So after every transaction, they could scan their card that they're wearing around their neck, or they can type their username and password to start that particular transaction. That's why they have a card swipe to do a login. Ask for who the commission salesman is when they're doing the invoice. It'll default to the salesman assigned to that customer, but you can swap it to a different salesman if that person helped the customer. I leave this stay on invoice after sale as blank. Ask to print before finalizing the invoices. I check that. Combine the same SKU items on a transaction. I recommend checking that because if you're doing quantity breaks, and if let's say you're selling 3 knives and you want the third one to be at a discount, you got to combine them all on one line so the quantity breaks will take effect. Prompt to display a lookup list or add new if the SKU is not found. I usually leave that unchecked. Fast add inventory when adding inventory at the register. If something new comes in, it's not an inventory, you can create the item with a fast add. We also going to use the full calendar scheduler when setting up the due dates. Overrides. If your system setup says to prompt for an email, this workstation could say don't prompt for the email, don't prompt for the zip code, don't ask for the phone number. It's on a workstation by workstation basis. Age verification is if you're selling liquor or cigarettes, then you would want to utilize the prompts on this screen. Touchscreen, you can have a 1224 by 768 or a 1366 by 768 touchscreen. And you could say display a time clock when you start up and prompt for the credit card type when tendering. So these are pretty much only touchscreen functions. Under miscellaneous, we'll say show cost when entering quotes. That way we know what our margins are. We can hide the customer info box if we wish on the scheduling calendar. We can skip prompt for password when taking AR payments. That way we don't have to keep putting our username and password on all the AR checks that we get in. And when they return or retrieving a suspended transaction, so if you go in and the guy left his wallet in the car, you can suspend his transaction. When he comes back in, and if you have several registers at the counter, we're saying when they hit retrieve, his sale will come up on all the workstations. And for security, we have the ability to set up a security camera that links to the actual sales information. So if you say, I'd like to watch the video on invoice 2719, the video will go right to that start of that invoice, and you'll be able to watch the transaction. Register balance, these are reports that at the end of the day, when you're Zing out, you can print all these reports. And credit cards, if you're using electronic credit card capture, you click that and you can set up your different credit card companies. And this will work out really, really well. Or you can say, I'm going to use my own credit card processor, and it just prompt you for an approval code. Devices we have available: cash drawers, pull displays, portable scanners, multi-monitors, signature capture with Topaz signature pads, and the Verifone. We don't pretty much use this anymore. This is sort of outdated, so I don't recommend buying this. Printers and email. Printing options. We can say skip the printing of the invoice receipt, and we can print right from the change due screen. Always prompt to choose the printer when invoicing. That takes time that we want to get the guy checked out, so I don't usually check those two. Always prompt to preview. At the counter, I turn this off also because I just want to get the guy out of the store as soon as he's ready to check out. But in the back room, I may want to have that so the salesman can take a look at the quote or the sales order to the screen without having to print it. Other things about grouping: if you want to group your invoices, displays, show your header on top of the groups, subtotals on top of the groups. We have to do this. Delay printing till transaction is saved. The report writer does not print out of memory. It prints out of the hard drive. So this is going to take 1 second longer than normal before it starts printing your document. Packing slips. Do you want to ask to print a packing slip? Customer labels that get put on the boxes that are going to be shipped out. Purchase orders, we say ask to print or email the PO. Now each of these invoices can use built-in documents or the custom documents, and the custom documents are very exotic with your logo and true type fonts and stuff like that. So I highly recommend using the reporter and the custom forms that can be provided to you. We tell it which printer to use and what type of form to use. Like if I drill down here, here's all the custom forms we've designed for customers. And each of these types of forms is going to ask basically the same question. You know, what are you going to do with your purchase order? What do you want to use? What is the form? What is the printer that this workstation is going to use? Each workstation could have their own printers and their own forms. So that's what that's all about on my station detail. Thank you.